Shabbat Shalom. This afternoon, let me start off with a little bit of American history. After the Declaration of Independence was completed, three of its creators, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, were asked by the Continental Congress to create a seal for their new nation. What did they propose? Two of the members, Jefferson and Franklin, proposed images recalling the exodus from Egypt and freedom from slavery. Franklin specifically suggested the parting of the Red Sea. His design, described in a handwritten note, alluded to Moses standing on the shore and extending his hand over the sea, thereby causing the same to overwhelm Pharaoh, who is sitting in an open chariot, a crown on his head, and a sword in his hand. So writes University of Pittsburgh professor Lester Olson, author of Emblems of American Community in the Revolutionary Era. Well, if you've looked lately, you probably noticed that Franklin's proposal lost. The seal of the United States does not contain Moses at the sea. The eagle, as you know, became our national symbol. The eagle, which soars high above us in the sky, messages pride, greatness, and power. Its ability to soar above us no doubt messages the heights to which the new nation could soar. But what about the Exodus? What if our national symbol was Moses at the edge of the sea, raising his arm to save the Israelites? What would that message to the American people? This week, I've reflected on that question because it's timely. Not because of the inauguration, which you might jump to think, which did bring about many images of the eagle and our nation's seal, but, well, you guessed it, because of this week's Torah portion, Bishalach. Bishalach tells the story of the Exodus. It's that portion that has Mi Chamocha, the rejoicing at the sea, that portion that includes the actual splitting of the sea, when Moses lifted his arm over the sea to split it, and our ancestors crossed on dry land. I can't help but wonder, what would the message be if the split sea were the symbol in our government seal? What would its impact be? What would it represent? Freedom, departure from slavery, Moses' leadership, God's role, that's an iffy one. The people exercising their free will, walking themselves across the land where the sea has split. So, made me think. And while I, for one, could do without God in our nation's motto or seal, and I understand that the Judeo-Christian biblical reference does not speak to all faiths in our country, there is something powerful about seeing the people cross the sea. That journey, if you think about it, was a communal one, and one that marks covenant, that marks a shared path together, and a commitment to a shared set of responsibilities. A common journey, which is perhaps a different message from the eagle, an eagle which soars heavenward and solo. Could fly with other eagles, certainly. The Exodus represents, as one scholar teaches, an aspirational goal for our nation. Freedom. Together. Now, I'm clear that this reflection is an academic exercise. No one has asked me to revise our United States seal or motto. But as I reflect on the rejected image and the current Torah portion, I invite you to consider another adaptation or two adaptations to Ben Franklin's discarded image. First, a little background. What we encounter in Bishalach, in this week's Torah portion in Exodus, is a crossroads for our ancestors. As my colleague Rabbi Patricia Carla Newman writes in the Torah, a women's commentary, the crossing at the Sea of Reeds, or what we often call the Red Sea, was not only the crossing out of Egypt and out of slavery, but also the entrance into an unknown future, made possible by a moment of extraordinary faith. Across the sea, triumph rings out in instrumental music and in song led by both Moses and Miriam. But before that, our tradition explains, it was neither Moses nor Miriam who took center stage, but a man named Nachshon ben Aminadav. The rabbis praise him for his initiative, the one who first entered the billowing waves, allowing all of Israel to safety. Nachshon's role is gleaned by the rabbis in the Midrash, who explained that, and I quote, he sanctified God's name at the Sea of Reeds. Kind of ambiguous phrase. The rabbis translate that to mean he entered the waters first. He plunged in first. So what did Nachshon do? He stands at the crossroads. The decision before him is whether to have faith and plunge into the water or be gripped by fear and remain on the shore. What does he do? Yes, he jumps into the water. And behind him, the Israelites follow. He leads the people to redemption, to freedom. And then they cross the sea. What happens? We read this in Torah. As Rabbi Carlin Newman writes, Miriam too faces an array of alternatives. What does she do but lift up her hand drum and triumphantly sing and dance, giddy with gratitude for God's redemption? Yes, we read in Torah that Miriam lifts her timbrel and the women follow her in musical dance. She sings, straight from Torah, sing to Adonai, for God has triumphed gloriously. As the comparison continues, Nachshon and Miriam perform different actions for sure. But as Rabbi Carlin Newman explains, both entered uncharted waters. Both could have held back, been timid and not taken on the roles before them, but they didn't. Instead, both jumped, one into the physical waters and one into the waters of a different kind of leadership, leading joy and celebration, creating community with common ritual. Both crossed the sea for freedom and emphatically marked the freedom. Both took the lead. So with all due respect to Benjamin Franklin, I agree that Moses is vital in the story of freedom. But I would change his recommendation for our nation's seal. I would suggest neither the eagle nor Moses and God at the sea. Instead, I would recommend Nachshon and Miriam alongside Moses at the shores of the sea. Each speaks to freedom and leadership. Moses speaks to partnership, patience, and humility within a community that he leads. Nachshon takes risks for the sake of freedom and is more impulsive. And Miriam gathers others to celebrate our freedom. Together they speak to what we Americans must do. Freedom is our gift. It is our gift, but it is also our responsibility. So we must together journey to freedom, journey with freedom, take risks for our freedom, and celebrate and protect our freedom. This is not a static journey, but an ongoing journey through a different kind of wilderness, perhaps, than our ancestors, but a journey nonetheless. Whatever our political views, we are part of a whole, just like our Israelite ancestors. Torah says when the Israelites left Egypt, they were a mixed multitude, or a gathering of different kinds of folks. They left Egypt together. So too our nation, right? Different beliefs, different political views, different backgrounds. Each of us has or will have in our lifetime a call to make freedom happen or continue. It may be writ large or small, in the personal realm or the public forum. But we have or will have a call to enter the water and make a difference. Or, of course, we could sit on the shore passively. Moses, Nachshon, and Miriam stood at the shores of the sea in their time. The truth is, in our lives, we have many instances of standing on the shore, looking into metaphorical seas. We can decide. Do I look across and decide to jump in for the sake of freedom, to make a difference? Do I lead the way? Do I use my voice to celebrate our freedoms and bring others with me? Or do I sit and watch others cross the sea? and do nothing and risk returning to Egypt. That is, risk losing my freedom. Rabbi Ruth Sohn writes poetically on Miriam's actions, here in words that really speak to Nachshon and Miriam, but words that I think can speak to us too. The crossroads we face today and how we might feel. Rabbi Sohn writes in a powerful poem, can I take a step without knowing a destination? Will I falter? Will I fall? Will the ground sink away from under me? To take the first step, to sing a new song, to close one's eyes and dive into unknown waters. For a moment, knowing nothing, risking all, but then to discover the waters are friendly, the ground is firm, and the song rises again. Out of my mouth come words lifting the wind, and I hear for the first time the song that has been in my heart, silent, unknown even to me. This Shabbat, I invite you to reflect. Reflect on Moses, reflect on Nachshon, reflect on Miriam, and ask yourself, what is my step, my first or my ongoing step to freedom? What is my new song that celebrates and defends freedom? And who can I bring with me as I enter the seas for freedom? Imagine as we do this, imagine the strength in numbers and the joyful noise we can make together. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will and ours. Shabbat